I wanted to share some quick actionable advice that you need to take care of before June 1st. And even if you're watching this video after the fact, we are going to be sharing some ways that you can work around this issue. But the fertilizer ban here in Florida will be coming into effect on June 1st and runs all the way through September 30th. Now, this is absolutely a very important thing to enact, and it is a very serious issue here in Florida. Our waterways are being destroyed by excessive fertilizer use both on a commercial and a home gardener scale. The aquifers, the red tide, it's not a good thing, and I am not encouraging you to fertilize throughout the summer months. What I am encouraging you to do is prepare for your fall garden. The issue with this fertilizer ban is that our prime planting season starts for most of the state in September. What do you have to do to your garden beds before you plant? You have to top off the soil and amend it with fertilizers or nutrients in some form or fashion for those plants to thrive in the coming season. So if you cannot purchase the fertilizers prior to planting, what do? You're up the creek without a paddle. So we are going to be talking about 2 workarounds for you to handle this fertilizer ban both responsibly and effectively. The first and most obvious workaround is, if you're watching this prior to June 1st, purchase it ahead of time. Now, if you are doing that, I am not encouraging you to use it over the summer months. I am simply encouraging you to have it on hand for when you need to amend your beds come early fall. I always encourage, no matter what the season, for my students to purchase a slow release fertilizer. It keeps the nutrients in the soil where it's meant to be longer, which is the whole point anyhow. The next thing to think about is the fact that technically only nitrogen and phosphorus are the 2 elements that they are banning. If you look on the package of any fertilizer, you're going to see 3 numbers that represents nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen and phosphorus are easily soluble, which means when we get our heavy summer rains, it goes through the fertilizer and the soil and leaches it or drains it out of that system rather quickly. That's why they banned it, is because they don't want it going into our aquifer and our waterways. But all 3 of those elements are crucial for plant growth. For example, this slow release fertilizer, I like this brand. I do have links in the show notes, but the vegetable garden, it's all purpose, right? So you have your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and potassium. This number is on all fertilizers. A nice well-rounded one where the numbers, the ratios are all the same is a solid bet so that you have the nutrients that your plants needs to thrive. Sometimes you might see one number of this elevated. That's okay, but you want to keep the ratios approximately the same so that you know the plants have what they need when they need it. Now, the second thing to think about once you have those fertilizers at your home is absolutely crucial to keep it dry. I do not want this leaching into our soil, especially if it's not even in your beds where it's meant to be. Rain action, rainwater, even your sprinklers will take what's in those bags or boxes and put it into the ground wherever it is. So make sure wherever you store it that there is no water reaching it, whether that be a shed or a garage or a patio. You want to keep it nice and dry. Ideally also cool, although that's not always achievable. The high temperatures and direct sunlight can also degrade the fertilizers quicker. The second workaround is to make it yourself. Now, I here make all of my own compost and worm castings. I have worm bins, I have videos on both. But the combination of making it yourself with a quality homemade compost and worm castings is hard to beat. Now, if you do this, obviously, it takes a little bit of time, but a lot of people don't realize compost can be made in as little as 3 months. If you start sometime this summer, you can easily have it ready for yourself in September. That's what I did when I first moved into this house. I started a 9-yard compost pile. I turned it by hand every 2 weeks, and I had a ton of finished compost to put into my garden beds for fall. So it can be done even in a short time frame. Now, these worm bins are kind of another secret workaround. If you notice the worm castings bag, they don't have numbers on it. That's because they don't count it as a high nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium fertilizer. So if you're in a pinch on its own as your sole source of amending the soil, it's not going to cut it, but it is a fantastic amendment. It's my #1 go-to soil amendment, and it's not banned for the fertilizer ban. So definitely something to think about. Making your own is free, and it is not as hard to do as you might expect. I highly encourage anybody and everybody that's able to do their own compost, make their own worm castings. But I am also realistic. I realize that everybody might not have the time or the space or the interest to do so. If that's you and you don't want to purchase in worm castings, a cover crop might be a fantastic solution to your problems. Now, cover crops are incredibly beneficial for a number of reasons. So if you're interested in learning more about how cover crops work in your summer vegetable garden, make sure to watch this video next.